Hello, welcome. And we are here to talk about our book journey. I am Shonda Moralis, and I'm here with Jillian Eaton. And we are authors who want to share all kinds of information about our book journeys. So I am the author of two books, Breathe Mama Breathe, 5 Minute Mindfulness for Busy Moms, and Breathe Empower Achieve, which will be relaunched in the fall of 2022 as Don't Forget to Breathe with new updated information. And Jillian, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Jillian Eaton, as Shonda said, and I actually write historical romance. So totally different genre. I started in 2012 self-publishing. I started doing it full time about 2015, and I recently did a 4-book series with a publisher. So I'm excited to kind of address those two different approaches in writing. And I just released my 32nd book. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about the entire process.
Right. So 32 books. That is unbelievable,
Yes.
especially from somebody who has two and
It is a
just and one that's revamped is like,
lot.
wow, because it is one of the most time consuming endeavors that I've found. So that
Yeah.
is so impressive. Yeah. And so I have the experience of working with a traditional publisher and one publisher, and you have both, which I think you have the traditional and self publishing, which is
Yeah.
really a great, helpful that we can talk about different choices when it comes to publishing. So, the reason we wanted to create this video is that a lot of people will ask us all kinds of questions. And I know I was curious about the process before I ever got started. And there's so much that you don't know about the process. And there's a huge, at least for me, there was a huge learning curve
Yes.
in the beginning
Yep.
of how it all works, just the whole. All of it. So we want to be able to answer these basic questions that we get a lot of the time, and also for me, I love to encourage people. People will say, I have this idea, or I started this book, or I've always wanted to write a book. And I want people to feel empowered. The more information we have, then we feel like we can go out and do it. And I encourage everybody to do that because why not?
Right.
You can always do it. So we're going to cover our journeys, our personal journeys, each of ours, frequently asked questions that we get, the different publishing options, the steps you might want to take in some of those, and address some myths and mindset blocks that show up for all of us. And I'm guessing even during 32, the 32nd book.
Yes. Every single book.
Right, right.
Every single one.
And that I think that is super helpful to hear for people to hear that, it's not abnormal. And we'll share some resources and tips finally.
Yeah.
So would you like to start with kind of how you came into writing and, had you always wanted to be a writer
Sure.
and what that was like for you when you first got started? Anything.
Yeah, so I remember writing, I think in second grade, and we were supposed to keep these daily journals. And I wrote, instead of my day, I just made up this story with like these trolls and princesses, and I would get in trouble. And they would say, no, you can't do this. Like you have to write your daily journal. So I said, all right, fine. So I went home and filled just journals of all these kind of fantasy stories is what I gravitated to when I was younger. I never imagined that I would do it full time. I mean, maybe in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, it'd be so cool if I could be, a full-time author, but I never thought that I would get there or I would be a type of person who would be able to get that, achieve that. And kind of happened very organically. I know there's a lot of stories out there of overnight success, and mine is not one of them, which is hopefully encouraging to people. In 2012, I remember very clearly, I had just gotten a Kindle and I was reading, and I read this book and I loved it. And I looked up more information about the author, and he said that he was self-published. And that was something that I had never heard of before. I didn't know it was a possibility. I didn't know people were doing it. My experience was I kind of knew how traditional publishing worked, not really that much. So I looked into it. I discovered goodreads.com, which is a great resource if you're not on that yet. and I started asking questions, and I downloaded a lot more self-published books. At that point, I was kind of just writing romance a little bit on the side just for myself. And I had a book I was actually going to submit to Harlequin. They were accepting online admissions for novellas. And so I kind of written that with that in mind. And I think I might have actually even submitted it, and I hadn't heard anything back. And I said, well, I think I'm going to do an Amazon Kindle account, Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon KDP. If you see that, that's what they're talking about. And I think I'm going to put my book up and see what happens. And I remember in the very beginning, I would get like one sale a week of my 99-cent book.
Woo! Yes, that's awesome. Yes.
Can you believe it? Like
Yes.
somebody reading my book. And I just kind of very slowly fumbled my way through the first 3 or 4 years. I went on to complete that series of novellas. I wrote 3 more novellas, which became my first quartet, which is big in the romance genre, I came to find out. And then I wrote a longer full-length series, and that did well. And it kind of went from there. By 2015, I decided to leave my job, and I decided to start writing full-time. And I've been able to support myself since then, just doing writing. And 2 years ago, might be 2.5 now, right before the pandemic started, I was approached by a boutique publisher. So there's kind of like the big publishers that you guys might have heard of, Berkeley and Avon in terms of romance. And now there's quite a few boutique publishing houses that are popping up, and it's the same. You sell the rights to your books just like you normally would with a bigger publisher, but sometimes they're a little bit more generous in terms of their royalty payout. And you might get a little bit more control over covers and content and editing than you might with the publishing house. So it's kind of in between self-publishing and the more stricter, maybe what you went through, publishing. The boutiques are kind of right in the middle. So it's a nice hybrid if you want that traditional publishing experience. If self-publishing is a little bit daunting, to kind of find a boutique publisher. And I did a 4-book series with them that did really well, that hit Amazon bestsellers, and it was a good experience. Now I'm back. I'm releasing a series that I've self-published. Having done the boutique experience, I'm going to go back to self-publishing myself for a little bit longer. And so that's kind of been my experience. Millions of mistakes, tons of things that I would do over, and learning along the way. And I do get a lot of emails. Just like when I started out in 2012, I sent out so many emails, maybe half of them got returned. Which I was so grateful for, to authors who gave me incredible advice. So I'm really doing this today. Yeah. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
Great. So I want to come back to that too, to talk a little bit more about the boutique publisher and that kind of thing. Great. All right. And I can share that I never really thought I wanted to be a writer. I liked writing, but I never felt comfortable writing writing fiction. And I always felt like I didn't know enough about anything to write nonfiction until I got a little bit older, I think. And so for me, it just started with blog posts, and I was writing about, I have 2 kids, and my son was an infant, and I was writing about motherhood and kind of mindful motherhood, and also to help some of the clients I was working with who were moms who were struggling too. And so it was for myself, it was for them. And then I thought, maybe I could compose this into a workbook and share it and give it to my clients or something like that. And then I realized, I might have a book here. I'm not sure. So I thought, well, I'm going to go the traditional route and see what happens. If that doesn't work, I will look into self-publishing. But like you, I kind of really didn't know anything about all of it. And so that was where, that huge piece of that learning curve. So I reached out to a number of agents. I'm going to say maybe 8 agents or something. I queried them, and we'll talk more about that query letter. And I heard back from 2. And so I was able to choose one. And then I had my proposal already. And so she shopped it to a couple of different publishing houses, and we got back a bunch of no thank yous. So it was some of them nothing, most of them, thank you. She doesn't have a big enough platform, or I just sold something similar to this, or, okay. So we reworked it and then came back, and then it went to so three publishing houses said they were interested, and so then it went to auction, which is really exciting, and we could talk
Oh,
more about
yeah.
that. Yeah, so then I was able to choose which publishing house I went with, and I've been happy with my publisher. So um, people always ask, for me, how long did it had the whole process take to have a traditional book published with a traditional publishing house? And I would say from sort of start to finish, that first book was about 2 years. And so people are just like, oh my gosh, which I know is a big benefit to why some people like to self-publish, because and I'm a very impatient person typically.
Yeah.
So if I had known it was going to take that long, I really been like, no way, no. But and then of course the second one was a little bit faster, but still quite long in that world. So that's one benefit, right, to self-publishing, is you're kind of in charge. You can put it up
Yeah,
there
it
when you
is.
want.
Yeah. You're definitely in charge, which can be a positive and a negative because you are responsible for everything, from making your own account on Amazon KDP or Draft to Digital. At the end, I can kind of go through some self-publishing websites, legitimate good ones that I
Okay.
would suggest people use, because there are some out there that basically in self-publishing, if anyone asks you for money up front, do not do it. And there are people who take advantage of self-publishers that way because they are starting out, and maybe they're doing self-publishing because the querying process and the agent process was too daunting. So they're going to try to do it on their own. But just throwing that right out there. If anyone ever asks for money or says, sign up with us and we're going to take a percentage of your royalties, unless it's directly through Amazon, do not email me first, and do not do that. I'll let you know.
So can I ask you about that? So, and when it comes to the boutique publisher, it's this,
Yes.
is it similar in that you get an advance? And
Some do advances. The one that I used did not do an advance, but they do monthly payouts, which I know traditional publishing, from my understanding, sometimes it's a little bit longer. It's not every single month. I've also sold the rights to some audiobooks, and I did get advances on those, which was nice. But then you do have to eventually pay out those advances, which I don't think people are necessarily aware of, which I was not when I started.
so let me pause you there. So I want to just
Yeah,
run back for a sec to kind of
yeah,
clarify what we're talking about, in case some
yes,
people, because I certainly didn't know any of this, and it sounds like you
yes.
didn't either, which is, if you go through a traditional publisher, you are paid what's called an advance for your manuscript, which is, and often it'll be broken up into two, or I think always two, not always, but often two. Upon signing of your contract, you are paid half. And then upon the acceptance of the final manuscript, when they're happy with it, you will get the second half of your advance. And an advance can be $1,000, and it can be, if you're J.K. Rowling, I'm not even quite sure, $500,000 or something amazing. So, but the point of the advance is, that's, in theory, it's supposed to be this money that it can carry you over as you're spending the time writing your book. But if it's $2,000, it's not going to get you super far in terms of, you can't give up your career if that's
Right.
what you're looking for there. And then you were talking about paying it back, which means once the book is out there and it's published in the world, after all of the sales, they make back the money that they've invested into the advance. Your book makes back that money. You don't have to pay anything, but then you start to get royalties once if it's $2,000 you were given, then once your book makes $2,000 for the publisher, then you start to get royalties.
Right. Then you get paid after you. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm not sure how it is. I know my royalties are twice a year. That's it, not every month.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that is with all publishers. So
Yeah.
just to clarify those terms and kind of
Yep.
go back to where
Yeah,
you
it's
said.
good.
So,
Yeah.
and I just want to clarify with your boutique publisher, you don't pay them anything upfront.
No,
They
nope,
may,
I don't pay them anything at all. They pay out of their pocket. They pay for the cover art. They pay for the editors. They pay for the promotions, which in my opinion is how it should be for a publisher. So from that aspect, they are more of a traditional publisher in that they take all of those costs onto themselves. Kind of not necessarily the drawback, but the and then I have to split my as a self-published author, how it works basically with Amazon. So say I sell a book for 99 cents, I get 35% of that. So for every single book I sell, I get 35 cents. And it kind of goes up. If you sell a book $2.99 and above, you get 70%.
oh, wow.
Which I think breaks down to just about $2. So if you self-publish, you get all of those royalties yourself, paid directly to you from Amazon every single month. You set up a bank account. I don't think they do paper checks. They did in the beginning, but now it's all wireless transfer. If you go through a boutique publisher, they are publishing onto Amazon or Barnes and Noble for you. So you don't, as I said, you don't do the cover art. You don't have to pay for kind of those things that I pay as I self-publish. But then I'm of maybe normally I get say $2 a book if I'm self-publishing. They're going to take my contract I worked out is about 50%. So they take 50% of that. And I get the rest. So definitely in terms of whether you self-publish or boutique publish or traditional publish, the royalties, how you get paid, I think is going to vary a lot. And if that's a factor, definitely look into what avenue you think would be better served for you. And for me, it's definitely been self-publishing.
Right. Now, what do you do about hardcover or paperback books? Do you print on demand, or how does that work when you
So I
self-publish?
do. So my boutique publisher, they did all the paperbacks for me, and I have a royalty system for that too. I would say in terms of paperback, it's definitely good to have them as a self-published or even a boutique publisher. But my paperback sales traditionally have been about 8% of all of my book sales across the board. So it's good to have, but it's not, I don't say it would be a necessity. In terms of my self-published books, I think about 70% of them I have available in paperback. You can do it directly through Amazon. They walk you through the whole process, and they look nice. Let me grab one. A visual.
Yeah, cool.
So this is my most recent release, and it looks like, and it's printed on demand.
Okay. And Amazon takes care of that. You set that up through Amazon.
Yes. Yep. Does it all, print on demand. They ship it directly to the person. They buy it off the Amazon website, just like it's a regular traditionally published book.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Good. So, so you're saying, because I've heard some publishers that talk about hybrid publishers, somebody will pay them a flat fee. They get editing, they get a cover, they get shaping the manuscript. And you're saying you are not a fan of that.
I mean, if you would like to self-publish and you don't want to do that stuff yourself, then I think it's a possible avenue. I just think one of the benefits and kind of cost saving things of self-publishing is that you do those things yourself, and you shouldn't be paying, unless it's through a boutique publisher. I personally don't think you should be paying out a percentage of your earnings in perpetuity to somebody else, to a third party who is not a publisher. And I see that happening quite a bit. And yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I do at the very beginning, probably the first couple of years of self-publishing, I made my own covers, which they got better, but they were not good in the beginning. I did all my own editing. Since then, I do have a cover artist who I pay in advance to do my covers for me. And I do have an editor who I pay just like a normal editor. And I learned how to format the books myself, which it's fairly simple. I just use like an old 1998 Microsoft Office. You don't even need like a fancy, Canva program or something. You can, but you don't need one. And yeah, so I don't really need, I try to keep my costs low, because I don't start making, money off of a book until it starts to sell. So I don't want, especially if I'm self-publishing, I don't want to be paying somebody else, even 20% of my book for as long as it's available, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So just to clarify, there are some options that might be worthwhile to pay a service if you're getting, if it's really clear about, editing and manuscript help and cover art, but then that's it. And no, you shouldn't be paying ongoing a part of your royalties.
Right. Yeah. Definitely avoid, if anyone were to approach you and saying, I still get emails all the time. Like I'll promote your book in exchange for 10% of your royalties or something worded like that. And I would definitely avoid those. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the steps I can share, and traditional publishing, I did a little bit already, and then you can share if there are any other steps that maybe are different with how you do it. So it would be, kind of what's my idea, obviously. Then the book proposal, which I don't know if you've had to deal with that since self-publishing, but for me, the book proposal, and I'll share this resource, The Essential Guide to Getting Your Book Published, is a book that I tell everyone. I'll put it, we'll mention that again at the end. It follows everything you need to know about self-publishing, traditional publishing, all of it from beginning to end. And it helps you format a book proposal, but there are a lot of pieces to a book proposal. There's the, table of contents, a brief summary, a summary of each chapter, your bio as an author, your platform, how you're going to help get the word out there, and a few sample chapters. Now that's specific to nonfiction, which is all I know. And so for nonfiction, a lot of publishers will say, or agents will say, don't finish your whole book, have it all outlined and sketched out with chapter summaries, but don't write it all, because the publisher who buys it may want to switch that around, versus my understanding of fiction would be, you need to have it all finished.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I mentioned before about a query letter, which is if you're looking to find an agent. So there are some traditional publishing houses out there. I mean, there are the big five, and then there are a lot of mid and smaller sized traditional publishing houses, but some will accept direct query letter, direct kind of letters from authors. And then if they're interested, they will ask for your proposal. But if you're looking for an agent, which can be helpful, and that's kind of where I came from, I thought, well, I'll try to get an agent. If I can't find an agent, I'll directly hit some of these publishing houses that will accept my information directly.
And
go ahead.
If I can interrupt. So with the agent, is that someone, does she or he stay with you throughout
the whole process? Yes.
Okay.
Kind of lifetime. I mean,
right.
Yeah, they're tethered to me for the rest of my life. No, I'm just kidding. Poor souls. No. So you write and this is in that book, The Essential Guide to Getting Your Book Published by Extut, and I'm forgetting the other name, but if you look that up, The Essential Guide to Getting Your Book Published is in there. A query letter is like a one-page kind of, you tell a little bit who you are and what your book is about. So that goes to the agents. And how do you identify what agent you might want to query would be, you go to the back of a lot of the books that are in a similar genre and a similar subject to yours, and see in the acknowledgements, often authors will thank their agents. Thank you to my agent, so-and-so. So then you can look up that agent and see if they're accepting new clients. It's a really good way to find agents who are interested in what you're doing. So you send off those query letters. Now, this was 5, 6, 7 years ago that I was doing this, but pretty quickly it came back. Like I got letters back, or I got response pretty quickly from my email, like in a day or two. So it almost seems to be that if they're interested, they're like, boom, they want to jump on it. And then some agents, crickets forever, and some agents, a week or two, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So all across the board. So an agent, if you do have an agent, will take typically 15%, sort of like a realtor. It's just like, this
Yep.
is what you get from your advance now. So it's in their best interest to, just like a realtor, try to get you the highest advance they can and the best deal. So they work kind of as your attorney to look over the contract and, just make sure all those pieces, as you probably know from the going with the boutique publisher, there
Yep.
are so many pieces. There's foreign rights, there's, all kinds of pieces
Yep.
that come with it that, again, as first time authors, especially, we have no idea what to
Yeah.
even look for. So, so that can be helpful in that way. And trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. So agents, and then the agents will take your proposal, maybe reshape it with you or just kind of look it over for you. And then they send it off to their contacts in the publishing world. And that's the benefit of having an agent, is they have these already established contacts. They know who might be interested in
Right.
it. And then, hopefully go from there. So thoughts about that, or anything you wanted to add, or different experience for yourself?
Yeah, no, when I actually when I started self-publishing, I was on, I don't know if you ever saw the blog Query. I hate that word, Query Shark. And I kind of toyed around with the idea, like I just did all the research I could into self-publishing, traditional publishing, boutique publishing, just tons and tons of research. And you can't, I think if you're a self-publisher, you should learn about traditional publishing. And if you're traditionally published, it's helpful to learn about self-publishing. You definitely can't know enough about the entire process. With self-publishing, it's all on you, which I said is good and can also be bad, or daunting, not necessarily bad. So your very first step, if you're starting from scratch, would be to get an account with Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. Of all your book sales, my experience with all self-published authors across the board is Amazon will make up most likely about 80% of your sales. They have a program called Kindle Unlimited, and that came out, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not positive, but basically, if you make your book restricted just to them, you kind of enter it's a 90-day contract that you renew every 90 days, but you make your book restricted just to them, and they enroll it in what's called Kindle Unlimited, and you get paid per copy sold. But then for anyone who subscribes to Kindle Unlimited, and there's millions of readers across the world who do, you get paid per page read. And it's kind of changed the game in self-publishing quite a bit, in that 5 years ago, my royalty income, because I do get the most questions about royalty and, how much money do you make, and how do you get paid? And I would say probably 90% of my income was coming directly from per book sold. And now in 2022, about 80% of my income is coming from Kindle Unlimited. So it's completely flipped around. So most of my books, if you look me up, I'd say, well, actually all of the books except for this one, which I just put into Barnes & Noble and on Apple and on Google, just for something different, try to catch some new readers who might be on those platforms, are all exclusive to Amazon. So definitely the first step is to get an Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing page or account. It doesn't cost any money. Amazon does not charge you for anything. They pay you, which is nice, which is a question also that I get quite a bit, kind of upfront costs, which upfront costs can be nothing. If you design the cover yourself and you do the editing yourself and you put it out yourself, you can basically produce a book for nothing. Just the cost of, you can't steal images for your cover art. So you do have to, if you are self-publishing and you're designing your own cover, you do have to buy the art for your photo. Do not try to swipe it off Google Pictures, or you will get in trouble for that. Thankfully I knew that much, so I didn't do that, but I know other people have actually been sued over over cover art infringement.
Yeah.
So definitely
Yeah.
don't do that. Go to a legitimate cover art site. I like bigstockphoto.com. They have a
Okay.
lot of look, and just do a search of photos in your genre. You can do any basic Photoshop. If you're not really that comfortable with it, definitely you can get a pretty decent cover photo for $80. So that I would say, if you're going to invest your money in anything when you're first starting out, invest with a cover art, because that's the first thing that people are going to see.
Right.
But basically, yeah, you get an account, you write your book, you edit your book, you re-edit your book, send it to some friends and family, even people you just know online, to check for typos if you're not quite ready to invest in an editor yet, which can be a little bit expensive. Get your cover, write your blurb. So kind of similar to querying, maybe a little bit, in that you are responsible when you self-publish for the Amazon, for the book's product page. So everything that's written there, it needs to be catchy and enticing and capture readers' attention. Or there's so many other options. They're just going to click and go by. You pick a price point. When I first started, all of my books were 99 cents. Now I start about $4.99. And I was able to do that kind of over time. And yeah, you just kind of go from there. So
Talk about platform. Talk about platform and, getting promotion, because that you can have this amazing book. Either one of us can have this amazing book, and if nobody knows about it, okay. So how do you get how do you get that out there?
Yeah. So for me, first, my biggest advice is, if in terms of fiction writing, because that's what I'm familiar with, is make sure that you're in the correct genre. So for me, it's historical romance. That's where I've connected the most with readers. That's where I've built an audience. I tried to release a contemporary romance, and flatline, didn't sell any. I tried a young adult and didn't sell any. So the biggest thing is just really finding your genre. And even if you start small, at least start somewhere, and kind of, my advice would be stick with it and kind of balloon out from there. In terms of getting a following, there's so many, ads that you can pay for. Amazon has a book ad program. I have not had good luck with it. I've tried it a couple times. I've wasted a couple $100. It's not for me. But there are people just like you and I talking about publishing who all they talk about is Amazon ads. So you can watch those and kind of figure that out. Same thing. I've tried Facebook ads and I haven't had a lot of luck. My biggest luck has been connecting directly with readers and bloggers, especially. Book blogging was a lot bigger in 2012, 2014. Not quite as big anymore, but I would actually, kind of similar how you found your literary agent. I would go on Goodreads. At the time, I just had 3 or 4 books out, but I would look for other similar authors, Christy Caldwell and Courtney Milan, who were huge in the self-publishing industry. And I would click on their books and I would go through and see what book blogger was writing about them or who gave them a 5-star review. And I would find their email and go and write them kind of a personalized email and ask if they would review my book. And I would spend a couple hours on that every day. And I'd send out probably 10 emails. I might get 3 or 4 back. But, and out of those 3 or 4 back, I might get 1 or 2 people who followed through and actually would read and review, but then they'd send it out to a couple hundred or a couple thousand of their readers. So that's kind of how I grew, very organically.
Yeah.
You also, with self-publishing, you're in charge of your keywords. So when you go to publish your book, look up, it's a lot of looking up other authors in your genre, other books that are doing well. Certainly don't copy them. But if, say, I write Regency romance. So I might say, write in like hot Regency romance and see what books pop up in the search engine. And if those are the books that I want to be aligned with, then that's going to pop in as a keyword. So you certainly can pay for Facebook ads, pay for Amazon ads. Some people do awesome. Like I said, have not been able to figure it out. I would definitely take kind of an old school approach, see if you can find any of those book bloggers who are still out there. Maybe they've moved to TikTok. I don't know. I know Goodreads.com. There's still millions of people on there. It's very big in the fiction community. I'm not sure if it's as big for the nonfiction community.
Mhm.
And then also newsletters. Bookbub.com is kind of like the big great whale. You submit your book, say, please accept me. And their baseline price, I think it's a little cost prohibitive. It's almost $600, but I've submitted 6 books to them. I had one that they accepted, that they sent out to their email list. And within 6 hours, it was ranked number 42 in the entire Amazon store. So
Wow.
definitely, I think newsletter building, for me, more so than ads. I go out and I search on Google and try to find newsletters that are doing well with books like mine in historical romance.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And I think, well, I know it's a full-time job to
yeah,
promote for some people, right? I mean, there are people who that's their full-time job to help um, to help
yes,
people who have books get the word out there.
yeah,
So social media, all kinds of ways, right? I mean, even Instagram, I know that can be a way
yep,
that people can share books and content, and podcasts too, depending. I'm sure there's a podcast for everything.
yeah.
So every genre, and that could be another great way to get on there and talk about what you're doing. Yeah. Anything else with that? Because I think platforms are author platforms. It's how, it's how much your name is out there, your level of expertise, again, depending, except if I'm more in the nonfiction, it's what they were looking for in my author platform was when some people would say it wasn't big enough. I didn't have,
Hmm.
20,000 followers on
Right.
Instagram. So, that can be helpful. And also having sort of that level of expertise too. So
Yes.
anything you'd add for that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're just starting out and you're approaching from the self-publishing side, you need a Facebook account, you need a Twitter account, you need an Instagram account. Set it up with your full name if that's already been taken. Like mine, I think is Jillian Eaton Books or on one and Jillian Eaton Author on the other. In hindsight, I would have done all my accounts with the same
Mm,
name across the board, so it's
yeah.
easier to look up. So that's a mistake that you can avoid. Um, and start trying to connect on Facebook, especially over the past year or two. I know in the romance genre, I know especially in self-publishing, private groups have become big. Each author kind of has their own private group, and
Mm,
then we interchange and do what we call group takeovers. I'm actually doing one right now for my publisher. They have a book club, and I think they have over 5,000 or 6,000 members. And if you can get into one of those groups, and a lot of times, if you look on authors' websites, they just have free signups for them. And if you're in the same genre, then hop on and do one. And you spend a week, you post 3 or 4 times a day, and you reach an audience of 5, 6, 7,000 readers who will most likely check out your book.
yep.
So it's a lot of legwork, but it's worth it. And once your name kind of starts to circulate out there, once you start to climb the rankings a little bit, it can have a really positive snowball effect. And for some people, it happens literally overnight. And for me, it took a couple of years, but now I have my core base, and I have an idea that when I do release a book, this is how I'm going to do in terms of sales. And thankfully, it's not guaranteed, but thankfully it's been pretty consistent over the past 5 or 6 years, and that I can rely on it as my full-time job.
Right.
Which is
That's fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about mindset blocks and myths. And you were saying it comes up for you after all of this
Yes.
time.
I'm in one
I'm
now.
yes, I'm going to just name a couple of the common ones that I know I experienced and I hear from other people. I have nothing original to say, or we think we do. And then it's like, and this maybe is more nonfiction, I'm not sure, but
Mhm.
I'm kind of like, what do I have to say? But to know that we all have our own take on it, our own experience. And so it's our own words. I'm not a writer. It's too hard or it takes too long. I can retire after I write my book. Well, I mean, so you are, I don't know what the percentage would be, but a lot of people can't make a full-time living being
Right.
a writer. And that's very impressive that you do. And it's definitely not my full income. I have a number of channels of income. Um, so people will say, well, I won't make any money. That may be true, but you likely will not be able to retire as soon as you write your first
Right.
book. But I mean,
Yeah.
yay, if you do, if that's what you want. The process is too overwhelming and I don't have enough time. So what would you add to that? And, again, we just want to normalize that all of this shows up
Right.
for
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
As I said, I think I've written 32 books, and every single one of those 32, and I'm in the middle of writing one right now, I hit the midway point, and I think now, even though I've been doing this full time, that this is it. This is the last book I'm going to write. I don't know why people have read my books before now. No one's going to read this one, and if they do, they're going to hate it. And in talking to other authors, those feelings and emotions are very common. I think in hindsight, now they actually help the artistic process. I will say writing is definitely not a make money quick scheme. Um, it has to be first and foremost, I think, an artistic passion, something that you genuinely love and enjoy doing. Even if I wasn't making any money off of writing, it's probably a hobby that I would do at night just to unwind, or just for fun, even if no one read my books. Um, that being said, you kind of have to couple that passion with more of a business mindset. So you definitely have to find a way to merge the two. And there are going to be days where you feel like you have one and not the other, like you're on top of the business end, but you can't write, or you're writing and then all your social media is falling apart, which is very common. And on the days that you feel like that, just either take a break or just kind of focus on what your brain does want to work on, whether that's writing, or maybe all you want to do is just send out some blasts on Facebook, and kind of circle back. It's not a quick process. For me personally, I'm a very slow writer.
Well,
There's
the number of books you've written begs to differ, but go ahead. Okay. We'll go with that. Okay.
um, that something else to consider about self-publishing, kind of circling back a little bit off topic, but you will, to stay relevant, especially if you're considering the romance genre, it's not a necessity, but you will have more success the more quickly you publish, and that you're able, they have to be good books. You can't just be, scrambling through and throwing whatever at the wall. But self-publishing, for better or for worse, readers kind of expect the authors to work a little bit more, or a little bit more quickly, basically.
Hmm.
That is a factor to consider. Whereas traditionally published, I'll see they might have one book per year or one book every 3 years. It's just a different timeline. So that's just something to consider if you're trying to choose between the two, figure out what avenue is best for you.
Mhm.
Um, I can't remember where I started from, but that is where.
Well, kind of what shows up, and in my experience too, is this, and I've talked about this in my second book, is the U-shaped curve, which is this,
Yes.
you start off with this idea and you're like, this is awesome. I love this
Yes.
idea. And then you're like, I don't know about this. Then you get to the bottom and you're like, first of all, you're like, kind of like, well, this is kind of crap. And then you're like, wait, I'm crap. And then, and
Yeah.
then if you keep going and know that, and to expect the bottom of the U-shaped curve, like, and it hit me both times too, where I was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, here I am. Oh, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Keep going. And then you're like, hold on, maybe it's going to be okay. And then this is awesome again. So it's like, to every single time, any kind of creative endeavor, this could show up. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would just say, from the self-publishing side of things, have a plan. Try to loosely stick to it, is what I like to say, in that, say you write a historical romance, it doesn't do great, don't automatically jump to another genre or or jump, kind of back and forth. Trust yourself and trust that if you have this instinct inside of you and this need to write, that you are good enough to be a writer, and that someone out there, lots of people want to read what you have. I do believe writing is just something that comes from inside. Certainly anyone can be a writer and anyone can teach themselves to be a writer. But I liken it to being an excellent singer or an actress or a poet. Just some people have that kind of urge down deep inside. And if you have that, don't let kind of your doubts or your insecurities dampen that or push that down. Allow that to keep coming up, and know that you will find a way to figure it out and to get your story out there.
Yeah. And it's important because we all need to hear all of these unique perspectives, and they are going to be unique. So, and another point I wanted to bring up is just this idea of, well, a deadline. I mean, I had fixed deadlines, and I was like, I need to make this deadline because it was external to me. When you're self-publishing, you may not have that. But for me, getting started is always the hardest point, to just sit down and get my butt in that chair to get started writing. And so I literally will say to myself, just 15 minutes or just a half an hour, and then I'm fine. But it's just like those first 15 minutes can be literally painful, of like, nothing's coming. This is trash. Like, what is this? It's so hard. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. And so to know, to expect that too.
Yes. Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, and I know I want to be aware of time too, because we have a couple more minutes, but what is your take on writer's block?
I don't care for it.
I'd rather not. Thank you.
I definitely do get writer's block or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes for me, it helps if sometimes I'll sit down and I'm ready to write a scene. I write in a very linear fashion. I don't jump around. I start at the beginning, and everyone does this differently. So not necessarily advising this is how you should write. But I start at the beginning and I write to the end. Other people put they write the whole story out in outlines, kind of what you were saying, for nonfiction. And they could start with like chapter 34 because they know what's going to happen in chapter 35. So in terms of writer's block, it's very common. I would just say try something different. So if I'm writing very linear, I'm up against this wall, maybe I do skip ahead and write a scene that I envision, my characters will get to. If you're someone who you write all over the place, maybe kind of stick yourself in a certain point in time and write yourself out of that few weeks or days or wherever your characters are in that timeline. But the way for me through writer's block is to try to just write yourself out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to have, like you talked about, sort of that structure, but flexible structure, right? So it's like, yeah. And to me, I almost feel like I don't like the term writer's block, because I feel like it can give people sort of that excuse of, I have writer's block, and it's an all or nothing sort of situation, versus it's that U-shaped curve we talked about, which is like sometimes it feels super hard and like you're slogging through mud, and sometimes it's like, ooh, this just flew. Where did that come from? This flew out of me, so that it's fine, that just because you're feeling like it's super hard and it's trash, which I do often, will feel like this is terrible, like this is not making any sense, and then I just know, okay, keep at it gently, sort of like kind and firm attitude with yourself of like, just keep at it, be persistent, it will make sense eventually. So yeah. Okay. So I think also it's important that you get clear on why you want to write. I mean, because like any kind of endeavor that takes time and persistence, we need to revisit that every so often, because there will be moments where like, why am I doing this again? So to have some answers to that. Anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up and share a few different resources?
Yeah, I think hopefully this has been helpful. Like I said, definitely do tons of research, but do make sure that your research is coming from a variety of sources. in terms of I had spoken a little bit about newsletters. So if you are, maybe you're self-publishing and you're not having a lot of traction and you're looking to get yourself out there, bookbub.com is the big one.
Book bug.
Bookbub,
Bob.
B-U-B. Yep,
B-U-B.
Bookbub. And I think Shonda's going to put my information. If anyone wants to follow up with an email, I can send you a whole list, and probably a little bit more cohesive than what I can think of now. But even if you just Google, like, say you write science fiction book newsletters, and that's going to give you a list of newsletters, and click on those. And sometimes ads are as cheap as $8. Sometimes they're like 600. But kind of find where you want to be in terms of promotion. So, get your accounts up, get your social media up, write the book, get your cover art, your blurb has to be professional, and publish it, and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
So has been my experience, and experience of a lot of my peers and fellow author friends. I will say the self-publishing community is, for the most part, very welcoming, and we love to answer questions and bring you into our groups, and we share, people's posts and books and promotions all of the time, which is a really nice positive aspect of it. So even though sometimes you will feel kind of alone, it is a very welcoming community to be a part of.
Nice. I was going to say community. Yes. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. You may not, that's one thing I learned with this whole process is, it can't hurt. And sometimes you get a no, sometimes you get crickets, and it's okay. And sometimes you get those wonderful yeses. You make connections with people, and, and then you can serve them too. So it's kind of this mutually beneficial and great relationship that can be established. So ultimately, yes, I hope that Jillian and I have inspired you to take your idea and just do it, because it's one of those things. You can look ahead 2 years and think, I can get started now and get something out there. I mean, I'm saying 2 years if it's the traditional route, or like Jillian, if 6 months from now you can have a book up on Amazon, and if you get started now and just step by step by step, and you just have to be persistent, carve out that time in your schedule and protect it, because I think, weeks can sometimes go by, or days can go by, where you don't devote time to it, and you just need to make sure you're protecting that time for yourself, and so go for it. So tell us how people can reach you.
So I have my website, which is Jillian with a J, Eaton, EATON.com. And all of my contact information is on there. So it's kind of a one-stop shop if you want to reach me. That's where I would suggest. And
Great.
love to answer questions. If you are especially in the romance genre, I'd love to include you in my newsletter, or do, promotion on Facebook or anything like that. So definitely reach out, and I would love to hear from you.
And I am at Shonda, SHONDA, Moralis, MORALIS.net. And you can find me there. And so check out Jillian's books on Amazon and everywhere else you can find her. And let us know if you have any questions. We may do another one of these. We'll see. All right. Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you.